is SportsCenter.
Hello and welcome to SmackDown SportsCenter. My name is Forrest Hudson, and as usual, do not adjust your screen. I do have a major blinking problem. As you know, we've invited many of the owners up here to our studios to come do picks for the week, and we have had a pretty big response on that. Many of you have been fighting over the opportunity to come up here, and though we had a long line, we could only choose one. Not everybody can go at once. So I'd like to welcome via satellite our first guest of the year. Welcome to us, Chip Hudson. Hello, Chip. How are you?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Forrest.
Okay, well, hey, let's get started with these picks, wherever you are. And let's start out with the first matchup of the week. We've got Pete Crusher versus Ebony and Ivory. Now, Pete Crusher's 3-1. Ebony and Ivory is 2-2. Pete Crusher has an opportunity to go up this week and take over first place. What are your thoughts on their matchup this week, Chip?
Well, looking at this Pete Crusher and Ebony and Ivory matchup, obviously we've got to give Pete Crusher the quarterback edge, as he has Peyton Manning, number one quarterback in the league. I do think Ebony and Ivory get a good game out of Flacco against Cincinnati.
Okay, I see.
As far as the running backs, we've got Pete Crusher with Mendenhall versus Detroit, Barber against Kansas City. Let's hope Barber has a good game against Kansas City. But I think we've got to give the running back edge to Ebony and Ivory with Ronnie Brown versus the New York Jets and Ray Rice against Cincinnati. So I'm going to give them a slight edge at running back.
Yep.
Receivers is what will determine this matchup. Though we've got some good matchups for Pete Crusher, he's got Calvin Johnson versus Pitt.
Oh.
Bolden versus Houston.
Wow.
And Walter versus Arizona.
I see.
You can't go wrong with Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, and Steve Smith. The Carolina Steve Smith this week. So I think wide receivers edge it out, and I'm going with a big win for Ebony and Ivory this week. I think they score big again.
So you're going with E&I this week over the Pete Crusher. Wow, that's a pretty strong prediction. Next up, we've got Resurrection Mofos versus the Polish Porn Stars. Both teams are 2-2. Could be a really big swing for either of these teams. What do you think, Chip?
I think the quarterback's going to be really close. I think Brady has a pretty tough matchup against Denver this week.
Wow.
I think the Polish Porn Stars have a good matchup with Hasselbeck versus Jacksonville. I'm going to give the slight quarterback advantage to the Mofos. Looking at running backs, we've got Mofos Steve Slayton against Arizona. Should have a decent game. Westbrook against Tampa Bay. Hopefully, if he's healthy, he'll run wild. And we've got, for the Porn Stars, D'Angelo Williams versus Washington and Clinton Portis versus Carolina. I'm going to give this edge to the Porn Stars for running back. Wide receivers, I think this also decides this matchup. We've got, for the Polish Porn Stars, Deshaun Jackson has been huge, scored almost every week that he's played this year. He's got Brandon Marshall against New England.
Ooh.
And Josh Morgan versus Atlanta. I've got to give the edge to the Mofo wide receivers. They've got Reggie Wayne versus Tennessee. He can't be stopped any week. And Ocho Cinco, who has promised us an end zone dance this week since he has not scored against Baltimore the last couple seasons. And we've got Hushmanzada, who I think returns big with Hasselbeck back at quarterback. So I'm going with a big win for Resurrection Mofos.
Wow, going with the Resurrection Mofos. Sounds good to me. So that would put Resurrection Mofos at 3-2 and Polish Porn Stars at 2-3. Hope nobody cries. Okay, so next up, Chip. We've got Baby Armageddon versus Amish Gone Wild. So, who takes it this week, Chip?
Now, Baby Arm had to pick up Gerard this week because he's got Breeze, not Brady, he's got Breeze on a bye, and with big part of his team. Think he'll have a decent game against Seattle, but you can't go wrong with Amish Gone Wild's Matt Schaub. He's going to blow up against Arizona this week. It's going to be a shootout. Looking at running backs, you would think Baby Arm would have the edge because he's got Adrian Peterson, best running back in the league, and he's going to go wild against St. Louis. And Lynch will have a big day against Cleveland, but I don't think they have as big of a day as Maurice Jones-Drew versus Seattle and Chris Johnson versus Indianapolis. I think this is the difference maker.
Ooh.
Looking at the receivers, they're pretty even. We've got Mason, Owens, and Burleson against Holmes, Manningham, White. I guarantee those guys end up being a wash. This game's decided by the running backs. I'm giving advantage Amish Gone Wild in a close one.
Wow, so going with Amish Gone Wild big. Sounds good, Chip. Next up, we've got the game of the week, the last place teams, the losers. We've got Jekyll and Hyde versus Sharky's Machine. So, Chip, what are your picks?
Game of the week. All right, Jekyll and Hyde versus Sharky's Machine. Both are in last place, but both have pretty good teams and lots of potential. Looking at the quarterback matchups, Jekyll and Hyde had to pick up Favre this week, who I think will have a good game against St. Louis. But then you've got Sharky's Machine with Donovan McNabb back against Tampa Bay. I think McNabb has a big game this week. Looking at the running backs, Jekyll and Hyde have Coffee and Marino. They both have great matchups. Tough matchups for Sharky's Machine, Jacobs versus Oakland and Benson versus Baltimore. Got to give the running back edge to Jekyll and Hyde. Then looking at the receivers, again, I think this will be a wash. We've got Garcon, Fitzgerald, and Cotchery versus Sims Walker, who's really come on lately, Hines Ward, and Wes Walker. I think, again, this matchup is settled in the running back category, so we're giving Game of the Week to Jekyll and Hyde.
Well, thank you, Chip. We really enjoyed you joining us today via satellite from wherever you're at. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we can have you again sometime, probably next week, and the week after that, and the week after that.
Hey, thanks for having me, Forrest. I've got bronchitis today, if you can tell, which I hope shows my dedication to this league and the world and all humankind. Thank you.
So anyways, guys, that wraps it up with the SmackDown Sports Center. I'm Forrest Hudson with the Major Blinking Problem, and we will see you next week. Good luck to all of you.